Single dad Marcus was buying groceries when armed robbery erupted. Seeing a lost 6-year-old girl in the gunman's path, he threw himself between them. The bullet tore through his chest as he shielded her. Bleeding on the floor, he heard her whisper the word that changed everything, "Dad." Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The fluorescent lights of Savamart buzzed overhead as Marcus Thompson pushed his cart down the cereal aisle, mentally calculating the cost of each item before placing it inside. $15.37 left in his checking account until Friday's paycheck. Generic brand cereal, store brand milk, the cheapest bread on the shelf. It was a familiar dance of poverty that he'd perfected over the past 4 years since becoming a single father. "Dad, can we get the Lucky Charms? Please?" 8-year-old Tyler looked up at him with those wide brown eyes that were so much like his mother's it sometimes took Marcus's breath away. "Not this week, buddy." "But look," Marcus picked up a box of generic fruity rings. "These taste just like the name brand ones and they're half the price." Tyler's face fell slightly, but he nodded with the kind of understanding that no child should have to develop. "Okay, Dad. Maybe next time." Marcus's heart clenched. Next time. There was always a next time when you were living paycheck to paycheck, always another week of choosing between what your child wanted and what you could afford. He worked 60 hours a week at the warehouse, loading trucks and moving boxes, but it never seemed to be enough. Rent, utilities, Tyler's school supplies, the medical bills from when Tyler had broken his arm last spring, it all added up to a life lived on the edge of financial disaster. They were heading toward the checkout lanes when Marcus first noticed the girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, standing alone near the candy display, tears streaming down her dark cheeks. She was wearing a pristine white dress with a pink sweater, the kind of expensive clothes that spoke of a family with money. Her long black hair was pulled back in elaborate braids with colorful beads that caught the store's harsh lighting. "Dad, that little girl is crying," Tyler whispered, tugging on Marcus's jacket sleeve. Marcus looked around for the girl's parents, but the nearest adults were an elderly couple examining soup cans 3 aisles away. The girl seemed utterly alone, lost in a sea of shopping carts and strangers. "Stay right here with the cart," Marcus told Tyler. "I'm going to see if she needs help." Marcus approached the girl slowly, the way he'd learned to approach Tyler when he was upset, calm, non-threatening, patient. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you okay? Are you lost?" The girl looked up at him with enormous dark eyes filled with tears. "I can't find my abuela," she whispered in a voice so small it barely carried over the store's background noise. "She was here and then she wasn't and I don't know where she went." Marcus's heart went out to her immediately. "What's your name, honey?" "Isabella. But everyone calls me Bella." "Hi, Bella. I'm Marcus and that's my son Tyler over there." Marcus gestured toward his cart, where Tyler was watching with concerned 8-year-old seriousness. "We're going to help you find your grandmother, okay? Can you tell me what she looks like?" Bella wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "She's got gray hair and she walks with a cane. She has a purple purse and she smells like flowers." "Okay, that's very helpful. Let's go to the customer service desk and have them make an announcement. I bet your abuela is looking for you too, and she's probably just as scared as you are." Marcus was about to take Bella's hand when he heard Tyler's urgent whisper, "Dad. Dad, look." Marcus turned to see Tyler pointing toward the front of the store, his face pale with fear. Near the checkout lanes, a man in a dark hoodie was gesturing aggressively at one of the cashiers. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the tension in the man's posture, the way other customers were backing away. Then the man pulled out a gun. "Everybody get down," the robber shouted, his voice carrying across the store. "Nobody move. Nobody be a hero." The store erupted in chaos. Customers screamed and dropped to the floor, mothers pulled their children close, elderly shoppers struggled to crouch behind displays. Marcus's military training kicked in instantly, 4 years in the army before Tyler was born, 2 tours that had taught him to assess threats and protect civilians. The gunman was between them and the exits. There was nowhere to run. "Tyler, get down behind the cart," Marcus ordered, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Stay low and don't move unless I tell you to." But when Marcus looked for Bella, she was gone. In the chaos, she'd wandered away from him, and now he could see her small figure moving toward the front of the store, apparently trying to find her grandmother. She was walking directly toward the armed robber. "Bella, no." Marcus called out, but his voice was lost in the screaming and chaos. The robber was at the customer service counter now, demanding money from the registers, waving his gun wildly as he shouted at the terrified employees. He hadn't noticed Bella yet, but she was getting closer, her small frame making her nearly invisible among the crouching adults. Marcus had a choice to make. Stay with Tyler, keep his own son safe, and hope that Bella would somehow avoid the gunman's attention. Or leave Tyler behind and try to reach Bella before something terrible happened. It wasn't really a choice at all. Tyler, stay down, Marcus whispered urgently. No matter what happens, you stay down and stay quiet. I'll be right back. Dad, where are you going? Tyler's voice was high with fear. I have to help Bella. I'll be right back, I promise. Marcus moved through the store in a low crouch, using his military training to stay hidden behind displays and end caps. The robber was focused on the cash registers, screaming at the manager to open the safe, oblivious to the small girl who was now only 20 feet away from him. Bella had stopped walking and was standing frozen in the middle of the main aisle, finally understanding that something was very wrong. She was directly in the gunman's line of sight, a perfect target if he turned around. Marcus was still 30 feet away when the robber spun around, apparently sensing movement behind him. His wild eyes locked onto Bella, and Marcus saw his finger tighten on the trigger. Time slowed to crystalline clarity. Marcus could see every detail, the terror on Bella's face, the gunman's finger squeezing the trigger, the distance between himself and the little girl he'd promised to help. There was no time to reach her, no time to pull her to safety. There was only time to put himself between the bullet and the child. Marcus launched himself forward, his body acting on pure instinct and training. He hit Bella at the waist, wrapping his arms around her and driving her to the ground just as the gun fired. The bullet caught him in the chest, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a display of canned goods. Pain exploded through his torso, but Marcus's first thought wasn't for himself, it was for Bella. He could feel her small body beneath him, trembling but alive, and that was all that mattered. Are you okay? He gasped, tasting blood. Bella, are you hurt? No, she whispered, her voice muffled against his jacket. You saved me. You saved me. The store was chaos around them. Customers were screaming, security alarms were blaring, and Marcus could hear the sound of running footsteps, either the robber fleeing or police arriving, he couldn't tell which. His vision was starting to gray around the edges, and he could feel warmth spreading across his chest. Bella, he managed to say, I need you to listen to me, okay? I need you to find Tyler, that's my son, remember? He's hiding behind a shopping cart in the cereal aisle. Can you do that for me? Yes, Bella said, tears streaming down her face. But what about you? I'm going to be fine, Marcus lied, the words coming out weaker than he'd intended. I just need to rest for a minute. Can you go find Tyler now? Bella started to crawl away from him, then stopped and looked back. Her small face was streaked with tears, but there was something else there too, a kind of fierce determination that reminded Marcus of Tyler when he was trying to be brave. Dad? She said, the word so quiet he almost didn't hear it. Marcus's heart stopped. What did you say, sweetheart? Dad, Bella repeated louder this time. Are you going to be okay, Dad? The word hit Marcus harder than the bullet had. This little girl who'd been lost and scared and alone, was calling him Dad. Not Marcus, not Mr., but Dad, the most sacred word in his vocabulary, the title that defined everything he was and everything he fought for. I'm going to be fine, baby girl, he whispered, and this time he meant it. Somehow, hearing her call him Dad gave him strength he didn't know he possessed. I'm going to be fine. Bella crawled toward the cereal aisle, and Marcus watched her go, his vision fading but his heart full. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear sirens approaching. Help was coming. Tyler would be safe. And Bella, this little girl who had somehow claimed him as her father in the space of a heartbeat, she was safe too. Marcus closed his eyes and let the darkness take him, but not before he heard Bella's voice calling out, Tyler. Tyler, I'm Bella. Your dad told me to find you. Even unconscious, Marcus smiled. Marcus woke up in Riverside General Hospital to the steady beep of machines and the antiseptic smell that seemed universal to medical facilities. His chest was wrapped in bandages, and every breath sent tendrils of pain through his torso, but he was alive. Dad. Dad, you're awake. Tyler's voice was thick with tears and relief. Marcus turned his head to see his son sitting in a chair beside the bed, his face streaked with dried tears but lit up with joy. Hey buddy, Marcus croaked, his voice rough from the breathing tube they'd apparently removed. Are you okay? Were you hurt? I'm fine. The police came and got us and they caught the bad guy, and the doctor said you were going to be okay but you had to have surgery and… Tyler's words tumbled over each other in the way they did when he was excited or scared. Slow down, Tyler. I'm here. I'm okay. Marcus tried to sit up but pain shot through his chest. Where's Bella? Is she safe? She's here, Tyler said, and Marcus realized there was someone else in the room. Bella was curled up in another chair, fast asleep, still wearing her white dress though it was now wrinkled and stained. She hasn't left since yesterday. The hospital people said she has to go home, but she keeps saying she wants to stay with her dad. Marcus's heart clenched. Her dad. That's what she calls you now. She told everyone that you're her dad and she's not going anywhere without you. Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. Dad, what happened to her real family? Why doesn't she have a mom and dad? Before Marcus could answer, Bella stirred in her chair. Her eyes opened slowly, and when she saw Marcus looking at her, her face lit up with a smile that could have powered the entire hospital. Dad. You're awake. She scrambled out of the chair and would have climbed onto the bed if Tyler hadn't gently stopped her. Careful, Bella. Dad's still hurt. I'm okay, Marcus said softly, reaching out to touch Bella's hand. How are you, sweetheart? Did you find your grandmother? Bella's face fell slightly. Abuela's in heaven now. She had a heart attack in the store right when the bad man came in. That's why I couldn't find her. Her voice was matter-of-fact in the way that only children could manage when discussing tragedy. The social worker lady says I have to go live with strangers now, but I told her I want to stay with my dad. Marcus felt his world shift on its axis. This little girl had lost her grandmother, the only family she had left, in the same traumatic event where he'd been shot saving her life. And somehow in her 6-year-old logic she'd decided that he was her father now. Bella, Marcus said gently, sweetheart, I'm not really your dad. I know you're scared and confused, but… Yes, you are, Bella interrupted with the kind of stubborn certainty that Marcus recognized from Tyler's more determined moments. You saved me. You got hurt protecting me. That's what dads do. But honey, you have other family somewhere. Aunts or uncles or cousins who… No, Bella shook her head firmly. Abuela said it was just us. Just me and her. But now it's just me and you and Tyler. We're a family now. Marcus looked helplessly at Tyler, who was watching the exchange with the kind of serious expression he wore when trying to solve a difficult math problem. Dad, Tyler said slowly, maybe we could be her family. I mean, if she doesn't have anyone else. I always wanted a sister. Before Marcus could respond, there was a knock on the door. A woman in her 50s entered, wearing a business suit and carrying a clipboard. She had the tired, compassionate expression of someone who dealt with tragedy professionally. Mr. Thompson? I'm Janet Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about Isabella Morales. Marcus's heart sank. Of course. Bella couldn't just stay with them because she wanted to. There were laws, procedures, bureaucracy that would separate them regardless of what anyone wanted. Ms. Rodriguez, Marcus began, I know this is complicated, but… Actually, Mr. Thompson, it's not as complicated as you might think. Janet sat down in the chair that Tyler vacated for her. Isabella has no living relatives that we can locate. Her grandmother was her legal guardian, and there's no provision in her will for Isabella's care. Normally, she would go into the foster care system. Marcus felt Bella's hand tighten in his. But Isabella has been very clear about what she wants. She's told every social worker, nurse, and doctor who's spoken to her that you're her father and she's not going anywhere without you. Janet looked at Bella with a slight smile. She's remarkably determined for someone her age. I told them you saved me, Bella said proudly. I told them you're the bravest dad in the whole world. Janet continued, obviously we can't just hand over custody of a child to someone based on the child's wishes alone. But given the circumstances, the fact that you risked your life to save her, the trauma bonding that's clearly occurred, and Isabella's complete lack of other family, there are options we can explore. Marcus's chest tightened, and not from his injury. What kind of options? Emergency foster placement, initially. You'd need to pass background checks, complete some training, prove you can provide for another child. But if everything checks out… Janet paused, looking between Marcus and the two children who were watching her with identical expressions of hope. Well, stranger things have happened. What do you think, Dad? Tyler asked quietly. I mean, we don't have a lot of money, but we have enough love, right? Marcus looked at his son. His brave, generous, loving son who was willing to share his father with a little girl who needed a family. Then he looked at Bella, who was clutching his hand like a lifeline, her dark eyes full of trust and hope. The rational part of his mind catalogued all the reasons why this was impossible. He was a single father barely making ends meet. Adding another child would mean more expenses, more responsibility, more complexity in an already challenging life. His tiny apartment had only 2 bedrooms. Bella would need clothes, school supplies, medical care, 1,000 things he couldn't afford. But then he remembered the moment when she called him Dad, the way his heart had swelled with a love so immediate and fierce it had surprised him. He thought about Tyler's excitement at the prospect of having a sister, about the way Bella had refused to leave his side even when hospital staff had tried to take her away. "Bella," Marcus said softly, "if you stay with us, things won't be easy. We don't have a lot of money. You'd have to share a room with Tyler, at least at first. We can't buy you fancy clothes or toys. Are you sure this is what you want?" Bella nodded emphatically. "I don't need fancy things, Dad. I just need you and Tyler." "And you, Tyler? Are you really okay with this?" "It would mean sharing everything, my attention, our space, our resources." Tyler grinned, the first real smile Marcus had seen from him since waking up. "Dad, she already calls you Dad. I think that makes her my sister whether we make it official or not. Besides," he added, his expression becoming serious, "you always taught me that we help people who need help. She needs help and we need her too." "We need her?" Marcus asked, curious about Tyler's reasoning. "Yeah. We've been sad since Mom died. Not all the time, but sometimes. But when Bella calls you Dad, you smile differently. Like you're not just taking care of me because you have to, but because you want to take care of people. And I like having someone smaller than me to protect." Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes. His 8-year-old son had somehow articulated something Marcus hadn't fully understood himself. That loving Bella didn't diminish his love for Tyler, but expanded it. That being needed by this lost little girl had awakened something in him that had been dormant since his wife's death. "Ms. Rodriguez," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him, "what do we need to do?" 6 months later, Marcus stood in the kitchen of their new 3-bedroom apartment, making pancakes while Tyler and Bella argued good-naturedly about whether chocolate chips or blueberries were the superior pancake edition. The morning light streamed through windows that actually had proper curtains instead of blankets, and the refrigerator was full of food instead of half-empty and echoing. The transition hadn't been easy. The paperwork alone had been overwhelming: background checks, home studies, court appearances, parenting classes. Marcus had worried constantly about money, about whether he could provide for 2 children on his warehouse salary. But then unexpected help had arrived. The local news had picked up their story: the single father who'd taken a bullet for a stranger's child, the little girl who'd lost her grandmother but found a new family. Donations had poured in from all over the city. A local contractor had offered to help them move to a larger apartment at cost. The Children's Hospital had covered Bella's therapy sessions to help her process her trauma and grief. Most importantly, Marcus had been promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse, with a raise that made their new life financially sustainable. His boss had told him that anyone brave enough to stop a robbery was someone he wanted in a leadership position. "Dad, Tyler says I can't have chocolate chips and blueberries, but you never said I had to choose," Bella announced, climbing onto a stool at the kitchen counter. "That's because compromise is important," Marcus said, flipping a pancake. "How about chocolate chips in half the pancakes and blueberries in the other half?" "See," Bella said triumphantly to Tyler. "Dad knows how to solve problems." Tyler rolled his eyes with the exaggerated patience of an 8-year-old dealing with his younger sister. "She always gets her way." "That's what little sisters are for," Marcus said with a grin. "To remind big brothers that life isn't always fair, but it's usually good." The adoption had been finalized just 2 weeks ago. Marcus would never forget the moment when the judge had made it official, when Bella had looked up at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Now it's real, right? Now I'm really your daughter?" "You were always really my daughter," Marcus had told her. "From the moment you called me Dad." Now watching his children, both of his children, bicker over breakfast, Marcus marveled at how completely his life had changed. A year ago he'd been struggling to raise Tyler alone, constantly worried about money and the future. Now he was a father of 2 with new responsibilities but also new joys he'd never anticipated. "Dad," Tyler said, interrupting his thoughts, "can we tell the story again? About how you and Bella met." It had become a family tradition, the story of the day their family was born. Bella loved hearing about how brave her dad had been, and Tyler loved the part where Bella had refused to go with the social workers because she'd already decided Marcus was her father. "Well," Marcus began, settling into the familiar rhythm of the tale, "it was a Tuesday afternoon and we were at Savamart buying groceries." Bella climbed into his lap even though she was getting too big for it, and Tyler pulled his chair closer. As Marcus told the story, their story, he realized that the bullet he'd taken had given him much more than a scar. It had given him a daughter, shown Tyler what it meant to be part of something bigger than yourself, and taught all of them that families aren't just born. Sometimes they're chosen, forged in moments of crisis and built with daily acts of love. And then Bella called me Dad, Marcus said, reaching the climax of the story. Because you saved me, Bella added, as she always did. Because you were brave, Tyler chimed in. And because, Marcus said, kissing the top of Bella's head, sometimes the best things in life come from the scariest moments. Sometimes you have to be willing to take a bullet to find out what you're really capable of. Will you always be my dad? Bella asked, a question she still needed reassurance about sometimes. Always and forever, Marcus promised. Nothing could ever change that. Even when I'm grown up? Especially when you're grown up. Even when I'm a teenager and Tyler says I'm annoying? I already think you're annoying, Tyler protested, but he was grinning. Even then, Marcus confirmed. Being your dad isn't something I do, it's something I am. Just like being Tyler's dad. You're both stuck with me forever. Bella giggled and snuggled closer. Good. I like being stuck with you. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Marcus sat on his couch looking through photo albums. There were pictures from the hospital, from their first Christmas together, from Bella's first day at her new school. His favorite was from the adoption ceremony, all three of them beaming at the camera, Tyler holding a sign that said, Official Big Brother, and Bella wearing a t-shirt that read, Daddy's Girl. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from his sister in California. Saw the news story about the adoption. Mom and Dad are so proud. When are we going to meet our new niece? He smiled, typing back, soon. She's excited to meet her aunts and uncles and cousins. Fair warning though, she's got Tyler's stubborn streak and her own very strong opinions about everything. As he put his phone away, Marcus thought about the man he'd been a year ago. Tired, struggling, doing his best but always feeling like it wasn't enough. That man could never have imagined the life he was living now, the fullness of a heart that had room for 2 children instead of 1, the daily joy of watching Tyler step into his role as big brother and Bella bloom into the confident, loving little girl she was meant to be. The bullet scar on his chest would always remind him of the day everything changed. But more than that, it would remind him of what he'd learned in that split second when he'd thrown himself between a gun and a child. That love makes you capable of things you never thought possible, that heroism isn't about being fearless but about acting despite fear, and that sometimes the most important moments of your life happen in the space between one heartbeat and the next. In the morning, he'd wake up to Bella climbing into his bed to tell him about her dreams. Tyler would steal the last piece of bacon while pretending he was saving it for later, and they'd begin another day of the beautiful, chaotic, perfect life they'd built together. A life that had started with a bullet and blossomed into love.